Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Maz and welcome to this masterclass on information frequency and energy medicine. This is a topic that I find so fascinating and which holds so much potential for healing. And I talk about this a lot in my socials, but I feel like I really needed more time and also to incorporate some graphics so that we can really explain these really important concepts more clearly and with more time up our sleeves. I posted recently about a frequency healing device that I've used personally and which helped to save my husband's arm after a really terrible road accident, and I received so much interest and so many great questions about how it works and how to use it. So I thought we would have a bit of a tour about what frequency medicine is, or information medicine, or energy medicine, and a brief overview of how it works. I'm going to try and contain myself because I could talk about this for days on end, but we'll keep it brief. And at the end of the video, I'm going to share some more information about how to use this particular frequency device, which is the Glowing IC Pad from Infopathy. So I'll show that in use and different programs and answer some of the questions there. So if you're interested just in how to apply the IC Pad, skip to the end. But if you'd like to know the how and why of how the pad works and how other frequency tools, like for example, my lovely tuning forks, work, and I've got so many other fabulous frequency tools in my toolkit. So I've got a terahertz wand, infrared therapy, I've got the TDP lamp behind me there. So this first section will talk about the theory of how this works. So let's start with what is energy medicine, or sometimes the interchangeable terms that are used are frequency medicine or information medicine. And basically this is medicine that uses electromagnetic signals to create a change, so to move us towards a greater state of health or a higher expression of ourselves. So rather than using, say, pharmaceutical or chemical input, we're using information from the electromagnetic or energy or frequency spectrum. And electromagnetic frequencies are all around us. So they are things like visible light. So for example, we start with the lower wavelengths of red, and as the frequency rises, we move through the rainbow and end up at purple. And it also includes things like sound. It includes things like microwaves, like x-rays, like radio, like TV signals. So all of these things are examples of frequencies or electromagnetic signals, and we exist in a rich ether of all of these messages, and some are more supportive of our health as biological life living organisms than others. So for example, things like sunlight and the Earth's frequency, the Earth's resonance, which is the Schumann Resonance, can help to support health. It's well known that grounding, connecting our bare feet or our skin with the Earth, can induce positive changes by reducing inflammation, increasing relaxation and healing. We also know that the sun has many beautiful effects in stimulating many different functions in our body, and similarly infrared, which is warmth, so the warmth of another body or a pet or a fire or the sun once again. So we have so many frequencies available to us, and there are others which are detrimental. So things like x-rays, for example, it's why we're advised not to have lots and lots of them, and why people wear protective aprons, or technicians wear protective aprons and get out of the room when operating an x-ray. Or things like Wi-Fi, for example, has been shown, even though we don't talk about that much in the mainstream, but that has been clearly shown to have deleterious effects on health as well. So there's ways that we can work to balance out the whole electromagnetic soup that we exist in so that it works for our benefit. So not only do we exist in an electromagnetic universe, but we too are electromagnetic beings. We are beings of vibration and frequency. And even if we choose to look at our bodies through an atomic lens, science tells us that atoms are 99.999% empty space. And I would suggest that we will soon discover that it's actually 100% empty space. It's just pure vibration and frequency. So even looking through an atomic lens, we are still predominantly empty space. We're vibration, we're etheric fields. And this understanding of us as electromagnetic beings is utilized by modern medicine as well in many of its diagnostic and treatment approaches. So even things like the heart and brain scans that are routinely used in hospitals, so an ECG for the heart, an electrocardiogram, which measures the frequency and electrical activity of the heart, and an EEG, electroencephalogram, which does the same for the brain. These rely on electromagnetic information that is being emitted by our bodies. And also interventions like MRIs, for example, they are looking at the relative density and various frequencies of different tissues in the body. So, for example, bone is more dense than muscle, and that will show up as information on a scan. And then on the treatment side of things, we have interventions like infrared therapy, like different wavelengths of UV, which are used for treating certain types of skin changes. We have pulsed electromagnetic fields. So this is just the beginning of accessing the whole scope of electromagnetic healing and frequency healing, information medicine. And while modern medicine is just coming around to using electromagnetic frequencies and signals therapeutically, this is something that Chinese medicine, for example, has understood for a long time. So we harness the natural electromagnetic fields, or EMFs, of the sun and of the earth. So in Chinese medicine, we understand that man or human is placed between heaven and earth and is a conduit for that cosmic and earthly energy. So we can actually power up our own Qi, our own energy, and potentiate it and make it more harmonic and vital when we connect with the earth and the cosmos. And interestingly, in modern science, we have discovered that the Earth has its own frequency as well. So I touched on this before. The Earth has a frequency of around 7.83 hertz. It's called the Schumann Resonance. And what's really interesting and curious is that in modern experiments where people were placed in isolated chambers which removed that earth pulse, that earth frequency from their environment, health started to deteriorate. There started to be cognitive changes. People's perception of reality would change as well. And as soon as they were restored to a natural environment, to that connection with the earth, their health returned. So it's just goes to show how vital our connection to natural frequencies are. And what I also love is that 7.83 hertz of the Earth's resonance aligns with a low alpha or high theta brainwave state. So this is the brainwave state in which we're relaxed but have a very spacious awareness. So it's not hyper-focused, it's not stressed, but we're truly present. And when we connect with the earth, we can entrain our brain to come into that relaxed, aware state. So that's why connection with Mother Nature is so vital in the Chinese medicine worldview. So our human body, minds and souls are basically a symphony of different frequencies that harmonize together when we are healthy. And when we lose vitality, or we suffer a trauma or injury, or we're responding to some external perhaps influences that are overwhelming our current state of energy, we can lose that coherence. So things like acupuncture and like frequency medicine can help us to reorganize and reharmonize that symphony of frequencies so we can move towards our highest expression of health. And not only are we electromagnetic beings, but we are also watery beings. So it is conventionally known that by mass we are, say, 60 to 70% water. But actually, if we count the water molecules in our body, some scientists say that we are up to 99% water, which is huge, isn't it? We're basically watery beings, or bags of water moving around. And the fact that we are watery beings is of particular interest for us today, talking about how energy or frequency medicine works, because water responds really beautifully to various frequencies. So you might have heard me talk or heard other people talk about structured water, and structured water is basically a more organized form of water. So if we think about water and what it might look like under a microscope, we imagine lots of molecules just floating around randomly. But when that water is acted upon by coherent electromagnetic signals, so for example, once again, the sun's energy or infrared, so warmth, then those water molecules start to move in such a way that they start to organize themselves into a lattice or a more coherent structure. And when the water is in this state, it allows for clearer communication of, say, vital information about health and healing, about areas that need to repair, about where certain hormones or neurotransmitters or information about them might need to go in the body. So when everything is coherent and organized, that information moves freely. There's no snags or impediments. But if there's areas where the information is snagged, where there's areas of non-structured water or bulk water, as it's sometimes called, then that information might get stuck or might be reduced in its intensity or transmission of important signals. And because we are water, we can also have a portion of us that's structured or potentially unstructured. And I think this explains a lot of what goes on when we move away from our most vibrant state of health. I think we lose some of that structuring. And that can be in response to non-native electromagnetic fields, like a lot of the electrosmog that's around us these days. So even things like dirty electricity, the wiring in the walls, or all the smart TVs and other devices that are out there, and just all the different Wi-Fi out there as well. It can start to disrupt our own signal, which is why it's so important to connect our feet to the earth, to get ourselves in the sun, to work with infrared frequencies in the form of, connection with another being, for example, or getting our bodies into natural infrared like the sun or a fireplace. So to really help us get a visual understanding of how frequencies can affect water, I thought I'd share some of these beautiful videos by Journey of Curiosity. So these are Cymatics videos which show how sound waves can exert an effect. So here we have, it's a frequency of around 100 hertz, and it's vibrating a metal plate that the water droplet is sitting on. And you can see that as that water has time to absorb that information, it starts to spontaneously express these beautiful geometric coherent shapes in response to that frequency input or that electromagnetic signal. And here's another video, and here we can see how we're moving through frequency changes and how the water pattern changes in response to that. So you can see that when certain resonant frequencies are hit, the water spontaneously arranges itself into beautiful harmonic structured forms. Then when we move through pitches which are perhaps less harmonic or less supportive of that order, it briefly loses its order, as you can see here, before it then once again settles into greater order again. And this is why I love sharing Cymatics videos, especially like these ones from Journey of Curiosity, so much, because I think they visually and simply explain how much we as watery beings can be affected by the invisible input of electromagnetic fields. So it's not just sound that can affect us, but it can be different frequencies of light, whether it's visible or non-visible light. It can be things like microwaves and cosmic rays. I've talked about in previous podcasts about how areas of greater cosmic activity and solar flares, there's been greater collective expressions of maybe revolution or great steps forward in consciousness or understanding. So we are all connected and woven into this electromagnetic web of life. So not only does water respond to signals from the world around us, but it can also store information and memory. So some researchers have suggested that because of water's ability to organize itself into these liquid crystal or lattice structures when it's fully structured and organized, that it actually has a greater memory holding capacity than silicon-based chips, for example. So this is similar to how homeopathy works. So with homeopathy, it's the information about a substance that is imprinted upon the water and then diluted down to the point where no physical or chemical remains of that substance are there, but the information remains. And to explain a little bit more about this concept, I want to share with you some amazing work done by a Nobel Prize winning professor of immunology, so Professor Luc Montagnier. So really you can't get any more esteemed in the mainstream world than this. And he devised a fascinating experiment in which he put two test tubes within a certain distance of each other. So one of the test tubes had water with bacterial DNA and the other had just water alone. And the test tubes were both stoppered, so there was no way for them to have contagion or communication in the way that we would understand it in the mainstream. So there was no physical way that they could exchange information between them. And these test tubes were left next to each other for 18 hours, and there was a background radiation of around 7 hertz, which is similar to the Earth's resonance, which we are all bathing and connected in. And what was amazing was that after 18 hours, the test tube that was previously just pure water showed the imprints or the information that was contained within that bacterial DNA test tube. It showed that information within the pure water test tube. So there could be DNA information read from the test tube that was previously only pure water. So that's pretty amazing, right? So how does this work? This is thought to work by the idea of resonance and also the idea of frequency transfer. So firstly, with the idea of resonance, we have the idea, say, for example, that there are two tuning forks of the same frequency, and if one is struck across the room, then the other one of the same frequency will start to pick up that vibration and will start to move as well. So it'll start to ring. Or for example, say, the E string on a guitar and then another guitar across the room, if it's properly tuned, it will also start to resonate. So there's already that resonant connection between the two vials which contain water. And then one of them had bacterial DNA, and there was that background of radiation of that 7 hertz. So that background radiation was like a canvas or like a medium for the information in the bacterial DNA test tube to transmit or broadcast, like a TV or radio broadcast, into the substrate of the plain water in the plain test tube. So pretty amazing, and it really opens up so much possibility for healing, because potentially if we can have a water information test tube that has the same information as, say, a chemical, then we might not need to potentially take that chemical, right? It opens up a whole avenue of opportunities for health and healing. And these discoveries springboarded other investigations and other research, which seem to point to the fact that it is actually the shape of the water around a molecule or around a chemical or hormone, neurotransmitter, drug, whatever component we're talking about. It's actually the space and the shape of the water around that molecule that is having the active effect on the body or on the health, and not the actual molecule itself. So in the past, we had this idea that it was these little molecules flying around everywhere, and they attach to receptors on a cell and they create an action that way. But actually what the latest understanding is that it's that empty space, or the watery space, actually I should say, around the molecule, and the unique puzzle shape around it that is made by that molecule that exerts the effect. And it also has then the opportunity to transmit that information more broadly, because we're not relying on, say, if we need to reach many potential receptor sites or receiving sites, we don't need to have thousands and thousands of molecules, but we just need that signal of that shape in the water, which can then travel and be replicated as well if we are coherent and structured beautifully ourselves as well. So this is my current understanding, very broad overview understanding of how energy medicine, frequency medicine, information medicine works to bring about a state of greater coherence, greater vitality, and greater health in the body. And this applies to all sorts of frequency or bioresonance devices. So not just the glowing IC pad that I talked about, but also different sound healing, tuning forks. We use it in acupuncture, electroacupuncture, that uses different frequencies, whether we're connected to our little electroacupuncture kit or even just using acupuncture needles to connect with fascia which is semiconductive. So we're creating a change in the space, that fascia space, that interfascia space, which is the meridians. So we're changing the frequency in the resonant cavity of the body. I also think that it works by potentiating and supporting and removing any roadblocks that might be in the way of our body's own innate ability to heal itself. So our bodies know how to heal. They have that power and that intelligence and wisdom. And that's how we know how to heal from a cut, for example, or a bone. Once it's correctly aligned, the body will actually do the work of mending it. So if we just get out of the way and stop overloading the body with other input that might drain its energy, the body will do that work. And sometimes we might need an extra helping hand to power up our energy, which is where things like acupuncture and energy devices can really help to bring more coherence and power and order to our energy fields, and sometimes can provide specific input to certain tissues, for example. So with acupuncture, with electroacupuncture, and with bioresonance or energy devices or frequency medicine devices, we can provide specific information for, say, bone tissue or nerve tissue, or maybe we want to bring a greater focus to certain hormone messages or neurotransmitter messages. So this is my understanding of how it works right now. It's an area that I'm deeply researching at all times, and also investigating how it works with our beautiful ancient ways of knowing, so our traditional Chinese medicine ways. So I hope this provides a good overview of the how and why of how frequency information energy medicine works. As you can probably tell, I could talk about this for days, so I will stop myself here and we will go on to the promised applications of the glowing IC pad. So the IC pad is basically emitting an electromagnetic signal that has a specific effect on the body, or potentially on the water of our bodies, and that's the way through which it works. So the electromagnetic signals on the database are called ICs, which is infoceuticals, so information medicine. And there are several different types. So there is a PEMF, which is pulsed electromagnetic field type. So these are the ones that can be applied onto the body. So when we run the PEMF program, we often put it on the sternum, directly on the skin, ideally. Or if it has if you have a sore area of the body, say like hip or knee pain, we'd put it on the hip or knee and let the program run. So the programs vary in length. We also have imprints, and imprints imprint the information into water. So we can imprint onto a glass of water. So most of the imprint programs are quite short. They're usually around 2 minutes or so. So you would select your program, select your device that you're using, the glowing IC pad in this case. We put our water on. This program's already running. So you'd put it on, then turn the IC on, and it imprints your water. So use the purest, cleanest water you can so that it's absorbing that information more potently. And then you would drink this once or several times a day. There's different indications for different ICs or infoceuticals. And another way that we can take in the infoceuticals, if we want to take them by mouth, is we can imprint onto a saline solution. So here I have a solution of beautiful filtered reverse osmosis remineralized water with a high quality Himalayan sea salt dissolved in the water. So the exact ratios are on the Infopathy website. But what this does is that when we put salt into water, it allows the water to structure more robustly and for a longer period of time, so it can hold that information for longer. So it's the same process. We would choose an imprint type of IC. We would put our saline solution on the glowing IC pad and we start the program, let it imprint. So in this fashion, we can use the imprinted water for 30 days. So we would add just a few drops, it might be 10 drops or so, to a glass of drinking water once or several times a day. And there are also Audible programs on there, or Audible ICs. So for these, we just put our headphones on and we listen. And in fact, on the database, there are free Audible programs or free Audible infoceuticals, which you just need to sign up for free to access those. If you'd like access to the PEMF or the pulsed electromagnetic fields and imprints, then it is a monthly or annual membership. So it's $15 Australian a month, less if you pay annually. And that gives you access to all of the different ICs on the database. There's currently 3,680 at last count, I think. And you can search for them by type, so by PEMF, by Imprint, or by Audible. So while I have tried the Audible, they don't sound very soothing or relaxing. So my preferred mode is the PEMF, the pulsed electromagnetic field applied on the body. When you're searching the database, I'll just show you here, you can search, say, for pain, for example, and then it'll show you different types, of pain that can be addressed with different lengths of programs. And as far as the dosage, that will depend on what it is that you are addressing. So as I mentioned in my Insta short, if, say, I've had a rough surf session and been bashed around a bit, there's a great full body alignment one that I use. It's about 15 minutes. So I lie down, I pop this on my sternum, and I let it do its work. And usually just 1 or 2 sessions of that in a day or 2 days is enough. And I can actually feel, as I lie there, my skull facial bones are moving into alignment, and I can feel little cracks and adjustments happening on their own as I relax into receiving the information. For something that requires more long-standing support or for heavier lifting, so for example, when my husband had the road accident and his nerves went completely offline, there was neurological testing that showed there was barely any signal coming through, so there was no impulse to make the muscles fire, so his poor arm was just hanging there. And what we did for him, we applied it once or twice every day. We use certain types of growth factors and human growth hormone. And for him, we would apply it directly on the arm. So he would sit on the couch and he would just receive that information every night, and we'd just kind of prop it up in place with pillows to stop it sliding around. What was interesting was that because there was growth hormones and I was sitting next to him on the couch, I developed a little pot belly from sitting next to him. And as soon as I started to leave the room when he was having his treatment, then that little pot went away. So obviously I didn't need it, but he did. Generally, I don't think that these exert an influence on bodies that don't need it. But for me, maybe because I was receiving so much, being around him so much at that time, that it had that effect. So I hope that has been interesting and helpful, maybe mind-blowing about the potential for what is possible with health. I think that this is a stepping stone towards an even more powerful health future for us. I think having access to frequency tools like this gets us used to the idea that we can shape our health with frequency alone. And I think what's on the horizon for us, I can't say exactly whether it's 5, 10, 100 years down the track, but I think what's on the horizon is that we will be able to access these frequencies and this information from within ourselves. I think we'll be able to generate it from within ourselves. I think that's the future, and I think this is a beautiful stepping stone along the way. I'm also excited because on the Infopathy database, there are also some Chinese medicine formulas that can be used to support our body from a Chinese medicine perspective, as well as many homeopathics and a whole host of other things. It's really exciting. So I will be making many more masterclasses and courses on this and other related topics in the future. Make sure you're signed up to my newsletter to find out what's coming. And I would love to hear from you. What struck you about this masterclass? Do you have any reflections or questions or inspiration, any thoughts about it at all? Please let me know. And if there's anything else that you'd like to hear about in the future, please let me know as well. I have got some podcasts that go into more detail on some of the concepts we discussed today. So I believe they are episodes 16, 17, and 19. And I think there's one in between there on structured water as well. So those episodes talk about the fact that we are electromagnetic beings, that we ourselves are emitting light as well. So not only only are we affected by light, but we emit it, and the state of our health and vitality can be read by the rate of our light emission, which is pretty amazing. And yes, I talk about structured water and the web of life, of electromagnetic life that we are woven into, and how some of the most wonderful frequency healing tools are those from Mama Nature herself. So get outside, put your feet on the earth or sit on the ground, get your face in the sun, connect to all the beauty and natural sounds around us, get into the forest or natural space near you, and just allow Mama Nature to share her healing information and healing frequencies with you. So thanks for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you next time. All the best.